everybody. This is my first video on the channel, so thank you for joining me. I'm actually working on a journal, a junk journal for a young girl who's turning 16 years old. And I checked with her mom first. She thought this would be a good idea for her and that she would like it. So I'm going to show you today how I'm going to make the cover, and I'm going to use fabric to cover it, and then I'm going to use a couple other pieces to kind of put everything together. And then I'm hoping to do more videos to kind of show you how the book is made and kind of grows from there. So I appreciate you coming to join me, and hopefully this will be something that's we're doing regular and have a good time learning together. So the first thing I'm going to start with is this cover. This is from a Wonder Book, which is very similar to a Little Golden Book. So I had already gutted this book for another project, and I kept the boards because I thought, you know, either I would use the cover as is or I might use it as a base, which is what I'm going to actually use it for today. So this will be the base of my cover. You can see that I already took the spine out, so I'm going to end up replacing the spine with some chipboard and use that to make a new spine. This is a 2-inch spine right here, so it's 2 inches across, and then it's as long as the book here, which is, let's see, about a little over 8 inches, almost 8¼ inches. These older books, I mean, any book really, they're always a little different with measurements. So you kind of have to, you know, keep a ruler handy or a marker to kind of just mark your place. I did this at 2 inches. It might actually be a little too thick, so we might cut this down to like 1.5 inches. I want to try to do 3 signatures. And I anticipate the signatures being a little bulky because I'm planning to do a lot of like fold outs and pockets and stuff, but I'm wondering if this is going to be too thick. So I don't know, we might play around with it. And then this is the fabric I'm going to use. I honestly do not remember where I got this fabric from. It's like a fat quarter of fabric. It might be Kathy Holden, possibly. She does a really awesome thing of fabrics with like a flea market finds, I think is what it's called. And I really love the fabrics. The girl I'm making this for does really love pinks and also mint green. So there is some green in this, but we're going to do more green kind of as things go on. But she is a real pink lover, so we're definitely going to use it for that. And then I am going to use Fabrifix to adhere the cover on. I also use our glitter glue quite a bit, and I prefer our glitter glue for most paper projects because I'm going to use the fabric as a cover, and it's going to be obviously the thing that gets kind of touched and used a lot. I feel like using Fabrifix for this might just be a better idea. It is a little gloopy. It does also have a smell, so if you're really sensitive to smells, just keep that in mind. Also use it in a well-ventilated room. It can get a little scary with how bad it smells. But I mean, honestly, it's up to you and your tolerance level. I can handle it for a little bit, but after a while, I'm like, okay, I think I'm done now. So the first thing we're gonna do, I actually made 3 of these spines, and I'm going to tell you why in just a second. So I'm going to take 2 of them, and I'm actually just going to glue them together. And this is just for stability. So I'm going to go ahead and just glue this together with the other spine. Hopefully this Fabrifix will come out. It's been a little bit since I used this actual bottle, so hopefully it's not going to disappoint me. Oof, come on now. Keep trying to kind of, I opened it and it was working in there. Okay, crisis averted. I managed to get it to come out. Now this is a little gloopy, so just keep that in mind as well. I am not the best at not glooping my glue on, so you want to be, you know, kind of cognizant of that, especially when you're working with fabric, just because some fabrics, depending on what it is, you can't really get you won't be able to get it off, you know, even after it dries, it could still stain the fabrics. So one thing, if you're really worried about that, if you're using a piece of fabric and you know you can't get more, or, you know, it's a special piece of fabric, you might want to, you know, test it. A lot, you know, people would recommend that to you anyway. I kind of do things a little bit flying by the seat of my pants and just kind of fix it on the back end. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. But so we're just going to glue those 2 spines together, just again for stability, and then they're going to end up here in the middle of our project. We don't need to leave too much clearance between the 2 of these, like for them to bend. It's going to bend pretty well on its own. So like you wouldn't want to keep them, you don't want to butt them up to each other like directly. I wouldn't recommend that necessarily, but just a little bit of space is going to be plenty for what you're going to need. Now, what we're going to use to kind of keep everything together or kind of create that hinge for the spine, I actually found these the other day. You can use tape. You can use bookbinding tape, which you can get on Amazon. You can also use Tyvek tape, which you can also get on Amazon. These are actually Tyvek envelopes. Tyvek is actually actually, if you send things via the post office and you use priority mail envelopes, the envelopes that are kind of like smushy and you can like wrinkle them up, not the cardboard ones, that's actually Tyvek. It's some type of material, and the rumor is it can't rip. I think it can rip, but it's very hard to rip it because of the way that it's made. It's got fibers in it, so it's not just like regular paper. So anyway, I was at a thrift store the other day and I found these Tyvek envelopes, and I thought that I could go ahead and use these for this. So what we're gonna do is I just cut the envelope open there and cut off the top. And so what we're gonna do basically is we're gonna create something that the spine will sit in, and then we're gonna go ahead and put it so the book covers are also laying on it, and creating and it'll give it space, and then we'll glue it all together, and then this will come with part of the book basically. So it'll be, I don't know exactly what word you would use, but it'll close as well, and then we'll cover the whole thing with fabric. So we don't need this whole envelope, obviously. So let me just go ahead. I'm gonna cut one panel off here. And I'm gonna go ahead and let me just use my spine as a measurement. So it only needs to be this long. Oops, sorry if you guys can't see that. Okay. And then I'm probably, let's see, we probably want to make it a straight edge across. So I'll probably do it to about here. Now this is going to be covered by the fabric, so I'm not necessarily worried about using a marker and having the marker show. But if you were worried about that, I would definitely recommend obviously using a pencil. Again, I'm a little bit more fly by the seat of my pants and see what happens. So, and again, I'm not actually cutting this on a straight edge. I could use my cutter, but because this will not be seen, then it's not quite as necessary or as important to keep it all clean edges. If that is something that concerns you just because of the way that you craft or the way that you like things to look, even when no one can see them, by all means, please go ahead and measure and use your straight edges and do everything you want to your heart's content. I have no problem with that, of course. I am a little bit more of a haphazard crafter, I guess you could say. I like the way my things turn out. It's just that they're not always perfect. And I think that's kind of the beauty of handmade items, is that they're not always perfect. So we're going to go ahead and just center this basically onto this Tyvek we used. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of center it there. Again, I'm eyeballing it, not so worried about how centered it is. I will go ahead and trim it down too. I think there's a little extra at the top there, so I will trim that. The good thing about the Fabrifix, by the way, too, if you've never used it before or used it very sparingly, is that basically it kind of glops up on your hands. I don't know if you can see that, but it kind of turns into, I call them boogers, sorry, I guess language content warning. I call them boogers. So one of the good things about it is that if you do get it on your hands and you, once it dries, and it dries pretty quickly, you can just kind of rub your hands together as you've been seeing me do, and it will kind of start coming off already. Or if you get it on your table, you can just wait a second for it to dry and then kind of flip it up, and it will come off kind of in those like little bits and pieces. So it does make it a little bit easier. The other good thing about using it is that it doesn't dry so fast that you can't move your pieces once it's on there. So that's helpful if you put something down and it's like slightly off kilter or something like that, and you want to have a chance to correct it. So that's also a good thing. Other glues work really fast and it's harder to do that. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, like I said before, we're not gonna worry too much about having a huge gap here, but I do want to have just a little bit, just to give it enough room to move. And we're gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna put some glue on the side. I'm not gonna put a ton of glue here, but I'm gonna put enough. And then we're just gonna go ahead and line this up so it's on there, and there's a little bit of space, but not a ton of space. We do want to try to keep it even space-wise, so that the cover is straight. So you can see it's kind of like even all the way up. So I'm just going to hold that there for a few seconds and let it kind of grab onto itself. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the other side. Again, not going to put a ton of glue here, but I'm going to put enough, just, make sure it kind of knows what I want it to do, gets the idea that I want it to stay there. So let's go ahead and we'll do that. Okay, let me just move this from the side here so I have a flat surface to press it down on. my craft spaces are kind of doing double duty at the moment, so they're all a little covered with a few different items, so forgive me if this is not the cleanest craft space you've ever seen, although hopefully you understand. So you can see here now we've got pretty even sides here, and there was some seepage, obviously, so it did stick a little bit there. So I'm just picking it up and flipping it over just so we can make sure it's not sticking to the table, which I'm not really that worried about, but you know, just it's worth it. You know what I mean? But you can see now, even though it's not even dry, you can see here that it's now closing like a book, and it's, you know, pretty good hinge on it. You can see there how much space we've got now. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it. I'm not going to play with it too much. The other thing you can do, so here's the reason why we cut a third spine for this. So what I'm going to do, I do want to hide the actual spine with the signatures. I want to hide the stitching of the signatures in. So what I will do is when I build, and I don't have the signatures together yet. That takes me a little bit of time, and I wanted to get this recorded. So basically what I will do is when I build the signatures, I'm ready to stitch them in, I will stitch them to this piece, which will become the spine. So the pages will be out this way, and then you'll be able to see all the stitching on this side. And then what I will basically do is I will take this and I will glue it onto here as well. And I will probably also take some more Tyvek, smaller pieces, and I will put it here on the edges and also glue it down that way. So there will be a few different ways that it's being held in place. I might also double this spine as well, because there will be sewing and the signatures will be a little heavy. So that'll be part of another video, but hopefully that makes sense. So today we're really worrying about the outside of the journal and just kind of getting the cover like together as a piece. So yeah, so there is a little bit of sticky here. So as you can see, I'm just kind of sorry for the shaking. So as you can see, I'm just kind of like rubbing my hand over where the glue is, and then it's just kind of coming up and I can kind of brush it away. So it's very helpful for that reason. Okay, so, all right. So I feel like it's dry enough now that we can kind of work on this. So I'm going to flip it over. Now you can see the other outside cover here. So here's our fabric. Of course, we want to make sure it's on the upside here. It's on the right side up. This fabric is really pretty. I do also like it because the square here, like one of the rows, is just about what fits the spine. So we can definitely have a nice coverage on the spine. I don't have a huge preference on, like, everything here is fine. Like, there's nothing here that I like want to highlight or avoid on the cover. So I'm just really going to use it so that I waste the least amount of fabric. I'm not too worried about catching one particular square somewhere. So the only thing I might do is I might take a look here and see where my spine is. So my spine is like right here between, here I have look how smart I am. I have a board up. Okay, so my spine is basically between 12 and 14, right? So if we look here, between 12 and 14, we want to kind of try to get centered as much as possible, a middle aisle, a middle row here. So I might spend a little time working on that. And actually we can kind of do it that way. So it's kind of in the center there. Okay. And then the only other thing we'd really want to pay attention to is if we have enough over on the sides, right? Because I'm going to have to turn these sides in and cover and flip them over. Now, the other thing I'll say is you could definitely iron this fabric so you wouldn't have these creases in it. Again, I'm not too worried about it. I'm not too worried about it, so I'm not going to worry about it, but that is something you could obviously do. Okay, so we can see where we want to cut. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead over here and I'm gonna cut a piece on the edge, give myself like a little cut line over there, which is enough of a thing here, enough for the edging. So I'm gonna go ahead and just cut up this line. Again, I'm eyeballing this. If you're really concerned about it, you could definitely get out a rotary cutter and a long ruler, you know, like a quilting ruler, and really do it. Just isn't as concerning to me, so I'm not gonna worry about all those extra steps. Okay, let's see here. Now, make sure you guys can see that. Okay, so we're gonna do 12, 14, okay. And let's see, how much of this do we need at the top? I'm gonna cut off some of the excess at the top here. So I think, all right, so the top of my book is actually right here. This is the top of my book. So it comes really right in the middle of this row. So I'm actually going to trim a little bit in the row above that and then cut up that way. So we will go ahead. And also the good thing to remember is that most of this will be covered. I'm also going to cut off a little bit of selvage here on the end, just because it's just an extra bit of fabric we don't need. When doing covers, I typically try to get rid of as much bulk as possible, just because, especially at this point, you are going to be like covering this with another thing to kind of hide your edges. And so you kind of don't, you want as little as possible underneath it, I guess, is what you could say. So now we have a much more cohesive, or I should say, accurate sized piece of fabric that we actually need. So what I think I'm gonna do first is I am going to put a little bit of fabric on the spine here, and I am going to glue it a little bit so that it's on the spine. Now basically what I'm doing is, because this does come out kind of in bigger glops, is I am kind of holding the spout to the paper. So when I run it down, it's kind of running like a line of glue, but it's not running like a giant like pile of glue. I don't know if you guys can see that. Like there is some on there, but it's not like a huge mountain of glue. So I am going to do that I'm just doing that to kind of try to keep it in check a little bit, how much glue is actually on the paper. Okay. So, alrighty. So now we have it glued on the spine, and I'm going to flip it over again. This, at this point, you can work with it either sideways or, I mean, like upside down like this. Like, it doesn't matter. You're, at this point, you should be, now, as long as you know you put the fabric on the right side up, you can work from it any direction you want. I'm also going to cut a little bit more off the top here, just because it's a little bit longer than the bottom. And I do want to make it a little bit more even, because like I said, I want to get rid of any of that bulk down there. Okay. So I will flip it around. One of the reasons I am going to flip it around is just to make sure that it's lined up. Since the fabric does have rows on it that are straight lines, it will be a little obvious if it's crooked. So we don't really want it to be crooked. So I'm just going to, right now, I'm just pulling up the edge here. Hold on one second. Let me pull it over. So now I'm just going to pull up this edge like this, and I just want to close it to see how straight it is and if it looks correct, right? So we can see here, it looks pretty straight to me. I feel pretty good about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another bead of glue here along the Tyvek. Okay. And I'm going to put a little bit over here on the edge as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and open it again and kind of press it down onto the fabric, keeping in mind that I want the fabric to be as straight as possible. And I want it to be wrinkle free. So you want to make sure you pull that fabric pretty taut underneath there. Let's see. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And honestly, the wrinkles really will kind of work themselves out. Even the, you know, the other pieces of it, they really will work themselves out. So it's kind of okay. Alrighty. Okay. It's also a good idea to do that as well, so you can make sure that you can close it and it's not creating problems for the book. It's not like pulling on the fabric or something. I find that that's more of a problem when you use paper though, as opposed to when you use fabric to cover a book, because obviously fabric has more of a give than paper. So now what we're going to do is we're going to cut these corners. So basically you're just going to kind of take your scissor and you're going to cut in a diagonal here down to where the corner is. So you're just going to kind of cut right where that corner meets the fabric and cut right at a diagonal. There's different ways to do this. I'm sure that if you watch other junk journal makers on here and bookmakers, they will tell you possibly different like measurements or angles or something. That's just kind of how I've always done it. And it works pretty much every time. So I'm not as worried about it. I am also, hang on, I'm just going to reorient this a little bit. I am also going to cut off a few of these small little threads we got going just to keep them out of the way. And then the last thing I'm going to do before I glue this down is I'm going to fold this piece over so that it is not only smaller in general, but also, again, I want to try to keep it as even and have as straight as line as possible. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue the whole thing this way onto the book. So we're going to go ahead and put a little glue on there and glue on there. Okay, and that is really gloppy, so we will have extra that will be sticking out, so it's gonna take a minute. But I wanted to try to, once again, kind of get the extra fabric kind of tucked under. That was my goal with that, was to get it tucked under. So if you guys can see that. Now, this junk journal is also a little different because I am not trying to incorporate the story from the junk journal pages. Sometimes, obviously, when you're using like a little golden book to make a junk journal, sometimes one thing that people like to do is actually incorporate the pages from the story into the book and keep them like as a story so you can actually read it. That's something I did. I'm going to let this dry for a sec. That's something I did with this junk journal, which I made from the Sorcerer's Apprentice book. However, when I did put the pages in here, I did not put them in correctly as far as order. So the junk journal is in, the pages are in here. The story of the pages is in here. However, it is not in the right order. So it's a little bit more like a game as opposed to actually reading a book. But with this book, I'm not going to incorporate it. It wasn't part of the point of the book. Do you know what I mean? It's not like it's based on a story that this girl who I'm making it for is like in love with or anything. It's just a story about the rainbow and colors of the rainbow. Okay, cool. So now let me just try folding it one more time. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Oop, got a little glue smudge on there on the front. It's okay. Alrighty, and so now what we're gonna do. Let's see. Let's do the other side, and then we'll worry about the top and bottom bindings, because honestly, that's kind of the hardest part. So let's do the easier sides first. So once again, I'm gonna take my scissors down here to the corner, and I'm gonna cut right there, right where the book page meets it, and just cut that extra bit off, and do the same thing up here. Okay, and again, it's just to get rid of the excess. It's not, there's nothing wrong if you leave it on there. It just makes it harder to make it a tight corner when you're trying to actually fold the fabric in. And that's something I do really like to do. I don't like it when the books don't have like a crisp corner. So that does bother me. A lot of things don't, but that kind of does. So I'm also going to do the same thing I did on the other side, except this time I actually am going to glue it down first. Let me just put a little bit of glue here to like kind of glue this over, because I folded it in again, kind of folding it in until it meets the edge of the book, and trying to make sure that it's straight. Okay. This is a little bit easier to kind of gauge straightness with, because it does have the straight lines on it because of the rows on the fabric. So that's kind of a happy accident, as our friend Bob Ross would say. Okay, cool. So I'm just pulling this back over again, just like I did on the other side. We're going to kind of hold it down and make sure it's like staying. There is a little extra because again, the Fabri-Tac glue is really gloopy. Not my favorite glue, but again, because it's a fabric cover and it's the cover, and so people will be touching it most, I wanted to give it a little bit extra oomph on it. Okay. All right, so now let me just flip this over and see what it looks like on the other side. Okay, I feel like we're doing pretty good. I think it is a little off straightness, but not so much that it's gonna make me mad. So I'm gonna be okay with that. And again, I'm going to just trim off a little bit extra of this again, because it is a little bit too long. Okay. Okay, there we go. Alrighty. So here's how we do the ends, or the top and bottom, I guess is what I should say. So the trickiest part, honestly, is right here where your spine is. So you want to create a shape like this kind of on the spine, or on the bottom of it, right? So you're going to take your scissors again, and you want to go in again at an angle. So you just want to angle your scissors to the, oh, sorry. Wait, is it this way? Yeah, okay, sorry. So you just want to angle your scissors till they go into where the center, where the spine is meeting the book cover here, and just make another, you're not going to cut anything out, you're just going to make a slit there, okay? So then what happens is when you pull this up, it very easily comes up on the end here, and it doesn't, it's not overlapping where you have your spine, and it makes it easier to actually use it for the cover, right? And then you're going to do the same thing on this side. And so it's kind of like wrapping a present. Okay, so now but however, when you do this, you do now, if you pull up the middle here, you can see that you do kind of have these two little ends hanging on. So what we can actually do is we can go into where the spine is here and cut a little, we're gonna cut out a little triangle. So you cut into it so that you manage to get a triangle cut out. Okay, and then you're gonna cut in so you get a triangle cut out. Okay, so now when you flip this up, there's nothing interfering again with your sides over here, right? And again, we're gonna cover this with the spine that has all the signatures tied into it, and then probably also cover that with some tie back before we do the insides. So you're not gonna see any of these cuts or any of these like little pieces and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind. Don't fret over it too much. It's going to, a lot of it's gonna get hidden. It's just important to build it right so that it looks right on the outside. All right, so now that we've done that here on the bottom, we're gonna go ahead and put some more glue along the bottom here, okay? And flip that up. I do think that the cover, quite honestly, is what takes the longest amount of time. I mean, obviously embellishing can take forever when you're working on a junk journal, because that's the real fun part. But when you're making a junk journal, I think also the covers are the other time, like real time suck, because it is important to kind of get it structurally right so that the book is structurally sound and won't come apart, and also allows you to, you know, the framework of it is good enough that you can then add all the pages to it and do all the embellishing on it without again falling apart. So it's kind of important to treat it that way. Sorry, my glue here has a lot of boogers on the top, so I'm just getting rid of those, and again wiping my hands to get them to come off so it's not all over everything I'm working on. So hold on one sec. All right. Okay. So go ahead and put a little bit more down here. Okay. And we'll flip up. And we're just going to make sure that that gets stuck there. Now you can see here, like I made a much deeper kind of triangle on one side or cut on one side than I did on this side, and it's totally fine. It doesn't matter. It's cool. The important thing is not to have a lot of extra bulk in the actual spine of your book, like where it's going to actually hinge and fold in on itself. So that's kind of the most important piece. All right, and then we'll do the same thing on this side where we'll just put some glue here. Oop. Sometimes the one thing too about Fabri-Tac is that it will have a mind of its own, and like all of a sudden you'll have like a volcano of glue at the top. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It's the other reason why I don't love using it, but and to be clear, I have made covers using art glitter glue and it's been fine. I've also used Beacon 3-in-1 glue. That's also turned out fine. I just didn't have it ready at my fingertips, and art glitter glue is expensive. So I've been running through a lot of it lately. So I'm trying to be a little bit more conscious of how much of it I'm using. So now you can see on the front here, we've got the cover finished up on the bottom. It looks really good, and we're gonna go, I'm just gonna flip the book over and we're gonna do the top this way as well. So once again, we're gonna cut in to where the spine is and cut in on the other side so we can get a triangle cut out. There we go. And then we're gonna cut in over here where the spine is, and then cut this way to get a triangle cut out. Oop. Go. Okay. And then we're just gonna keep gluing and folding. So we're gonna put some glue down on the fabric and fold it over and pull it tight. Now the other thing with fabric and pulling it tight is that you can technically pull it too tight and then pull it so it's out of alignment. So unfortunately, I think with a lot of things you can kind of do what you want and make mistakes in a lot of things, and they end up being fine. But there are some things that when it is a mistake, it looks like a mistake, and unfortunately fabric being out of alignment or something being not straight obviously looks like a mistake, right? So again, this may not end up being perfectly straight, and I am okay with that because that's the kind of crafter I am. I feel like handmade pieces should not be perfect, otherwise why hand make them? So not that I think that they should look terrible, that's also not what I'm saying. I hope you guys understand that. But I definitely don't get too hung up on that kind of stuff when I'm making something, because I want it to be not obvious, but I want people to understand that it was made by someone. It was not something that someone bought off a shelf. All right, so you can see here now we've also got the cover, the top of it also done, and we've got some really good. So here's the cover now, all covered, and when we close it, looks pretty good, right? Might be a little off on the straightness scale, but I'm gonna be okay with that. It is even when I put it down on the table and I, prop it up like a book. So it does look pretty good there. You can see our spine in there. So what we'll do in the next video is I will, probably what we'll do in the next video is I'll assemble the signatures, which will take a little bit of time, to be honest. And then from there, we will sew them into the spine, and then we will assemble the whole book, probably in a third video where I will actually put the spine into here and then use the Tyvek to kind of button it down, and then worry also about covering these sides of the book there, and then we'll embellish in the next video. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I really appreciate you joining me on my channel. I've been paper crafting for many years, and junk journaling now for probably about I want to say 5 years, but I've only ever made like a handful of actual journals. So but it's something I love. I love ephemera, and I love collecting old pieces of paper and old fun things, and I love fabric. So there's just a lot of reasons that this speaks to my soul. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that it's something that you can do on your own, and hopefully you'll bookmark the channel and come back and see me again. So thank you so much, and have a great day.